You've always believed there was an outside, a somewhere else, a place beyond the edges of this world, this life, this form, that if you traveled far enough, thought hard enough, or waited long enough, you'd find the door. But what if there is no door? What if the entire universe, every glowing galaxy, every beam of light, every breath you've ever taken, is part of a maze, one so perfectly designed that even your thoughts are confined by it, one where every attempt to leave only leads you deeper in. That's not fear you're feeling, not quite. It's something softer, more subtle, the gentle realization that something is wrong. Welcome to Stellar Sleep Tales. You've wandered into a corner of the cosmos that doesn't want to be found. You're here now, so breathe, listen, and stay with me just for a little while, because the deeper we go, the more you'll start to see. Not just what's out there, but what's keeping you here. Maybe you've noticed it before, not in science books or deep space photos, but in your dreams. In those moments when you wake up and still feel caged, or when you stare at the stars and instead of wonder, you feel watched. That feeling isn't imagination. It might be the maze calling back. Let's begin somewhere simple. Light, the ultimate traveler. It defines how fast anything can move, but it also defines how far you can ever go. You see, the speed of light isn't just a number, it's a wall, a smooth, silent wall wrapped around you, around all of us. And no one, no signal, no ship can pass it. Pattern interrupt. Ask yourself, if freedom were real, why would anything be unreachable? That's the first hint. The second, gravity. It's not just a pull, it's not just falling apples and black holes. It's a decision, a force that shapes the cage, curves your path, slows your time. It tells light where to go, and light listens. Even photons, the freest of all, are obedient. You live inside rules you never chose, inside limits you can't break. But the worst part isn't that the maze exists, it's that it doesn't look like one. The walls are invisible, the loops feel like progress, the ceiling looks like sky, and that's why you'll stay. But don't worry, you won't be alone here. I'll guide you, piece by piece, turn by turn, through the puzzle no one remembers entering. You may think you've been here for a few minutes, but you've always been inside. This maze doesn't let go easily, but if you subscribe, you might just learn how deep it goes. Let's begin with a thought experiment. You are floating in space. Absolute stillness, no sound, no direction, just you, alone. And then you try to move. You push, reach, attempt to drift forward, but there's nothing to push against. No up, no down, only stillness that stretches forever. And still, something stops you. That is the illusion of infinity. You feel like you could go anywhere. But try it, and the cage reveals itself. Let's talk about that cage. The universe has a shape, not just in the poetic sense, in the literal, measurable, calculable sense. It curves, not just because of gravity, but because of its own mass and energy, like a sphere too large to comprehend. You are not living in a flat plane, but in a distorted volume. This matters because curves lead to loops, and loops always bring you back. No matter how straight your path seems, If you go far enough, you may return to your starting point without even knowing it. This is not freedom, this is containment. Now consider the observable universe, a radius of about 46 billion light years. That's the farthest light has reached since the beginning of time. But beyond that, we don't know, can't know, not because we're not smart enough, but because we are walled in by the speed of light and time itself. Ask yourself, why would a universe with infinite space also contain hard limits on how far we can see? That's not how a sandbox works. That's how a prison works. Let's shift perspectives for a moment. Imagine a creature born inside a glass dome. For all its life, the dome is the world. It sees the stars through the glass, hears the echo of its own thoughts. It might even believe it's free until it presses too hard against the edges. What if you're that creature? And what if the glass dome is made of constants you were taught not to question? Here's another layer of the maze: time. It flows in one direction, never backward. But why? Why can't we return, rewind, relive? Entropy, you're told, the arrow of time. But entropy is merely the word we use for increasing disorder. That's not a law, that's a label. The truth is, time only flows forward because that's how the maze is built. Now ask yourself, why build a trap that forces you to march endlessly in one direction? Maybe to prevent escape. Imagine now you're near a black hole. Time slows drastically. A single second outside becomes years inside. Light bends, clocks fail, distances stretch. You think you're moving, but you're frozen in the eyes of the outside world. Does that sound like exploration, or does it sound like another room in the maze? The deeper you go, the more distorted your perception becomes, until you're not even sure what's real anymore. That's not science fiction, that's general relativity. Let's revisit the idea of pattern interrupts here. Most viewers assume they're safe because they can stop the video, scroll away, wake up. But here's the catch: what if even that is part of the illusion? Even your exit points might be scripted. When you feel an urge to leave, ask yourself, why now? Maybe because the maze doesn't want you thinking too long in any one direction. Maybe because something watches, not with eyes, but with systems, with structure, with silence. Back to gravity. Gravity doesn't just pull, it guides, it warps. It's the architect of stars and galaxies, but also of barriers. It creates wells you cannot climb from, event horizons where not even information escapes. Gravity might be the most polite jailer ever designed. It never forces, it merely invites you to fall, and you obey every time. Here's a terrifying question. If gravity can trap light, then what else is being pulled against its will? Your consciousness, your awareness, your memories. Hold that thought. We'll revisit it. Let's briefly talk about the cosmic microwave background, that eerie radiation glow from the birth of the universe. It surrounds us in every direction, uniform, constant, but that also means something else. You are at the center, not metaphorically, literally. From your point of view, the universe expands away from you in every direction, just like it does for everyone else. Every point is the center, every observer sees the same. That feels democratic, equal, but also cleverly deceptive. If everyone feels centered, no one questions the walls. Do you see it yet? The prison is elegant, not with bars, but with balance, not with guards, but with gravity, not with rules, but with constants. And the cruelest part, the illusion of freedom is built in. You dream, you travel, you learn, you think, I am evolving. But the walls never move, only your perception of them shifts. Open loop now. What if this maze wasn't built by gods or aliens, but by the universe itself, by the rules that appeared when time began? And what if those rules are tightening? Soon, we'll ask if the exits you've been promised, heaven, hyperspace, transcendence, were ever real at all. But for now, just breathe. You're doing well. You're waking up. The maze doesn't like that. But we're only just getting started. You never questioned the floor beneath you, the air around you, the light coming through the window. But what if none of those things were neutral? What if they were part of a structure so old, so embedded into your being, that you forgot to ask why they're there in the first place? Let's be very clear. You were born inside a wall, not next to it, not outside of it, inside it, not made of bricks or steel or smoke, but made of constants, forces, directions, realities so permanent that they feel invisible. But permanent doesn't mean free. In fact, it often means the opposite. Start with motion. You are moving right now around the earth, around the sun, around the galaxy, spinning, drifting, tumbling, but you don't feel it. Why? Because motion only feels real when it changes. If everything moves together, you feel nothing. That's the first hint. The walls move with you. You never hit them, you never see them, but you feel the constraint, like walking through a forest where every step takes you in a circle. You think you're choosing your path, but you always end up back where you began. Ask yourself this: if you can't feel the walls, are they still there? Yes, they are. You've just been taught to trust them. Consider direction: up, down, forward, back. These are illusions, arbitrary choices we make to understand space. In deep space, up and down vanish, yet we still orient. We still cling to an internal compass. But what is it pointing toward, and why won't it let go? Every rule of space we think we understand is a limit disguised as logic. Gravity, for instance, is not a helpful force. It's a curve in the floor of your cell. It's a slope you can never climb. It tells you, quietly, that up is harder, and most of the time you agree. But what if you said no? What if you asked why gravity keeps you pinned to one plane of existence? Let's take an example. You fall. A simple act. A child drops a toy. A glass tips off a table. You trip. It's normal, expected, but falling is a surrender. It's a submission to a deeper force. Why do we submit so easily? Because the walls are persuasive. Gravity isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers, and we listen every single time. Now shift focus to time. You were told it moves forward and that this forwardness is unstoppable. You live one moment after another: birth, breath, memory, death, always in that order. But who decided that? And why does it feel irreversible? Entropy. That's the usual answer. Systems decay. Heat spreads, order becomes disorder. But that's just a story we tell ourselves. Entropy describes what happens. It doesn't explain why. And it certainly doesn't prove that reverse time is impossible. It only proves we don't know how to access it. Pattern interrupt. If you dreamed in reverse, would you even notice? That question matters because it forces you to confront the wall of time. It's smooth, it's featureless, but it's there. Every second you live, you're walking along it, unable to stop. And yet, no one has ever found the edge of time. We just assume it stretches forward endlessly. But what if it doesn't? What if time isn't a line, but a tunnel? Curved, redirected, reflected, you move, but every step is predetermined. Every choice leads to the same place, a trap disguised as progress. Let's talk about perception. Your senses, you trust them. You believe that what you see and hear and feel is real. But senses are filters. They're not windows. They don't show you the universe, they show you a version of it. One that's been edited, cropped, color corrected for survival. You see in a narrow band of light. You hear in a limited range of sound. You feel a sliver of temperature. Everything beyond those borders is invisible. So, who benefits from your blindness? Ask yourself, is it a coincidence that we're blind to most of the electromagnetic spectrum? Infrared, ultraviolet, X rays, gamma rays, radio waves, they all exist. They all move through you right now, but you don't feel them. You don't see them. You walk inside an ocean of signals and assume it's empty. That's not a flaw, that's design. The maze lets you feel just enough to function, but not enough to escape. Even your body is part of the wall. It ages, it decays, it refuses to change past a certain point. You regenerate skin, blood, neurons, but not forever. Eventually, your cells give up. Why? Why does the biological system obey a timeline of slow failure? Because permanence would be dangerous. Because if you never aged, you might stop believing in limits. Aging keeps you afraid. Time keeps you obedient. Gravity keeps you grounded. Together, they build the perfect wall. Now think about language. It organizes thoughts. It communicates needs, but it also traps ideas inside categories. If you can't name a concept, you can't understand it. And if you can't understand it, you can't escape it. What if the most important truths about the universe have no words? What if we can't escape because we can't even describe what's outside? Open loop. There's a kind of silence that isn't absence, it's suppression, a ceiling above awareness that keeps you from thinking too far. The closer you get to understanding the prison, the more distracted you become. A noise, a dream, a sudden emotion, something pulls you back. That might not be random. The maze defends itself, not with guards, but with diversions, not with threats, but with limits. And the limits feel natural, logical, even kind. Because if the walls looked like walls, you might question them. Instead, they look like home. Even the stars, those distant burning suns, are part of the trap. You look at them and feel small, inspired, but they are also unreachable. You'll never walk among them. You'll never touch them. The speed of light says no. The stars are hope, but hope in a prison is a leash. Let's go deeper. The brain, the final wall. Your thoughts emerge within limits you can't control. You don't decide what memory surfaces. You don't pick your dreams. You don't choose your deepest fears. They appear like echoes from a room you've never entered. Why? Because your mind is not outside the maze. It's the core of it. That's the most unsettling realization of all. You can't escape because your desire to escape is generated inside the trap. It's like trying to bite your own teeth. You loop, you loop, you loop again, even when you think you're resisting. Let's pause here. You might be feeling disoriented. That's normal. The brain dislikes open ended questions. It wants answers, closure, control, but we're not giving it that. Not yet. We're pulling the rug gently, inch by inch, because only in uncertainty does the deeper truth start to flicker. Let me ask you something. If this truly is a cosmic prison, what does it want from you? Hold that question. Don't answer it. Not yet. We'll come back to it in a later room of the maze. For now, just know this: you were born inside a wall. Every force you've trusted, every constant you've learned, every boundary you've accepted has been part of the trap. But awareness is the first crack. The second crack, realizing the walls respond to your gaze. You're watching the maze, and maybe, just maybe, it's starting to watch you back. There's a strange sensation that follows us in silence. You've likely felt it when walking alone at night. That subtle instinct that something is watching, even when nothing is there. You tell yourself it's imagination, but deep down, the feeling never really leaves. It's as if the maze has eyes. Throughout history, civilizations have described watchers in the sky: spirits, deities, beings that see but do not speak. They appear in myths, dreams, near death experiences, always observing, rarely intervening. This recurring theme crosses cultures and continents. Why? The possibility exists that observation is built into the structure of the universe itself, a constant awareness layered into reality, not human, not divine, something deeper, a surveillance without intent, presence without morality, an architecture designed to monitor, not understand. We know particles behave differently when observed. It's called the observer effect. In quantum physics, particles remain undefined until measured. Observation collapses probability into form. In simple terms, things behave as if they're being watched. But by what? If the universe changes behavior when observed, then who or what is doing the observing when you are not? This question isn't about consciousness alone, it's about structure. What if observation is a law, a rule embedded into space itself, not optional, not passive, a constant state, one you cannot avoid? Pattern interrupt. Close your eyes. Picture total darkness. No stars, no walls, no self, just space. You're floating, completely unseen. Now ask, do you still feel watched? The watcher may not be a figure, it may be the system, a feedback loop of awareness woven into the maze. The walls do not merely contain you, they reflect you, and if they reflect you, they may also respond to you. Some physicists argue that consciousness and reality are entangled, that awareness shapes space, even time. If that's true, then every thought may echo in a place beyond reach, not metaphorically, structurally. Simulation theory expands on this. It suggests you may be inside a computed environment, a digital prison where perception is code and behavior is tracked. It doesn't matter whether you believe it. What matters is that more scientists than ever are taking it seriously. Let's return to the concept of the maze. A real maze has architects. Its paths are shaped, its exits placed, its dead ends designed. So if our universe is a maze, someone or something must have made it. But here's the unsettling part. What if it wasn't made for you? Maybe the maze wasn't built to trap you. Maybe you're collateral, an unintended visitor, a bug in the program. But the moment you became aware of the maze, it became aware of you. Open loop. You weren't supposed to notice the walls. And now that you have, something has changed. Let's examine the data. Dreams often place us inside impossible architecture, endless corridors, repeating rooms, unreachable exits. Psychologists call these anxiety symbols, but from another angle, they resemble surveillance systems. Spaces designed not for comfort, but control. Why do we dream of being chased? Why do we imagine being seen from places we cannot see? Dreams may be feedback signals, echoes of the maze's attention, or worse, messages filtered through your own limits. You may be unable to interpret the watcher directly, so your mind reshapes the input into symbols it can handle. There's a theory called panpsychism. It proposes that consciousness exists at all levels of matter. Every atom, every field holds a flicker of awareness. If true, then the maze itself might be sentient in ways we cannot grasp. A wall that can think doesn't need to speak, it only needs to remember. Pattern interrupt. Recall a memory you've never shared with anyone, a private thought, something small. Now ask yourself, if no one else ever heard it, where does it live? You'd assume it's gone when forgotten. But what if forgetting is an illusion? What if the maze records everything? Consider that time is irreversible, but data can persist. A message you sent years ago, a photo you deleted, a movement you made in private. Are you sure it disappeared? Digital memory isn't just for computers. The laws of physics do not allow true deletion. Information can't be destroyed, it can only be rearranged. If that holds, then every moment you've lived still exists somewhere. Every choice, every thought, archived. That's not paranoia, that's physics. So, what then is watching? It may be a mechanism, a layer of reality tuned to awareness, a system that catalogs events, tracks motion, interprets behavior, or it may be a presence, something quiet, something patient, something waiting. Why wait? Because you might be the variable, the one anomaly that sees the maze clearly, the one consciousness that noticed the rules. That's dangerous, not to you, but to the system. Systems don't like unpredictable elements. This might explain why, the closer you get to truth, the more disrupted your reality becomes. Glitches, memory lapses, sudden emotional fog, not distractions, corrections, interference. It's easy to dismiss these moments. We label them stress, fatigue, randomness, but randomness itself may be a defense system, a layer designed to dilute patterns before they become visible. Open loop. You may be reaching a threshold, a mental event horizon, the point beyond which awareness is no longer tolerated. We'll talk more about thresholds in a later segment. For now, ask, if the maze has watchers, are they merely passive or do they act? The ancient texts speak of silent judges, invisible presences that record but never respond. Or perhaps they do, in patterns we don't recognize. A voice heard once in a dream, a change in the sky, a forgotten fear returning with perfect clarity. You are not the first to question this. Many have. Some stopped, some disappeared, not physically, but mentally. They fell back asleep. The maze lets you wake, but only once. That may be why you're here now. Not to escape, not yet, but to stay awake long enough to understand what's really happening. Remember, the maze cannot be seen all at once, but its presence is felt in fragments, in mirrors, in music, in time delays, in déjà vu. These aren't errors, they're signals. Pause here, take a breath, notice how your mind wants to wander, how distractions appear. That's part of the system. The watcher doesn't want confrontation, only awareness, not too much, just enough to observe. That's the contract. You live, you act. It watches, but contracts can be broken. The next segment will ask whether gravity, the most familiar force, may not just trap your body, but also your mind. For now, hold the idea that you're not alone in this experience, not because there are others watching with you, but because something is watching you both, from inside the maze and from far, far beyond. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales, where we drift together through questions no one dares to answer. If you've made it this far, you're already deep inside the maze, and tonight we meet the warden. Not a being, not a face, but a force. Calm, quiet, invisible, and impossibly strong. We call it gravity. But what if gravity isn't what we think it is? What if it's not just a force, but a design, a trap, one that you can never outrun, not even in your thoughts? Take a breath, let the weight of your body melt into your bed or chair, and notice something strange, that gentle tug you feel toward the earth. It never stops, never changes, never loosens. It follows you everywhere. From childhood to old age, from mountaintop to ocean trench, from birth to death and beyond. And it begs the question, why is gravity always watching you? At first glance, gravity seems like one of the simplest laws in the universe. Things fall, planets orbit, apples drop from trees. But behind that simplicity lies a terrifying truth. Gravity is not a pull, it's a bending, a warping of the very space and time you move through. The more massive something is, the more it bends this fabric. And you're sliding down those bends without even knowing. But here's the first twist in this pattern. You never actually fall into anything. You fall along curves. You're trapped not by walls or fences, but by the very nature of the path beneath you. Try to escape gravity, and you're really trying to escape geometry itself. And geometry, unlike any prison, cannot be broken. It is the prison. Let's follow this path deeper. Imagine a place in space where gravity has gone too far, where the warping is so extreme even light itself can't climb out. You already know its name, the black hole. But have you ever stopped to think what a black hole really is? It's not a thing. It's a place where escape is impossible, not because of bars, but because space has been bent into a downward spiral that never ends. A gravitational sinkhole that erases direction, erases escape, and, more disturbingly, erases time. Now pause. You're about to hear something that might not sit easily. Inside a black hole, time doesn't just slow down, it might stop altogether. For someone outside, you vanish in an instant. For someone falling in, it takes forever. This isn't theory, this is relativity. Time itself becomes a trap, a time trap. And if time can be trapped, so can memory. Here's a pattern interrupt. Ask yourself, what if the universe is designed to record everything, but never let you remember? Every time you move closer to a massive object, gravity not only pulls you in space, but slows you in time. When you sleep near a black hole, 1,000 years might pass outside, while only minutes pass for you. Your life would stretch, distort. Reality would break apart. Your thoughts would slow. Eventually, you might even forget what it was like to be free. That's why some physicists call black holes information prisons. Because even if something falls in, it might still exist, but only as warped data, as echo, as radiation too faint to decode. But wait, doesn't that break the rules? Shouldn't information be preserved? Shouldn't every atom, every thought, every memory be recoverable somehow? Hawking's paradox challenges that. It tells us that black holes might destroy information or hide it so deeply it's as good as gone. And if gravity can do that, then it is not just a warden, it's a censor. Let's return to something quieter. A room, still and dark. You're lying on your back, staring upward. The stars seem distant, harmless, but each of them is bending space. Even your own body is doing it, though you're too small to matter. And above you, Earth is doing it more. The sun, even more, but you feel none of it. You're immersed in a gravitational bath so familiar you don't notice it anymore. That's the genius of the prison. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't scream. It just is. It's always been, and that's why it's so effective. Another pattern interrupt. What if your own memories are warped by gravity? Not metaphorically, but literally. Recent theories suggest gravity may influence how your brain prioritizes time. Near stronger gravity, your perception stretches. Seconds feel longer, images feel slower, you lose track of time, the mind becomes heavy. This is more than a feeling, it's measurable. Astronauts in space experience time differently from those on Earth, and yet they don't notice until the clock tells them. So imagine if you were born near a black hole. You'd never know how long things should take. You'd never realize your reality was crawling. You'd live a full life inside a slow motion loop. Maybe you'd dream slower. Maybe you'd love slower. Maybe you'd die slower. But here's where it gets truly strange. You wouldn't just live in slow time. You'd become slow time, and outside observers would see you frozen, forever falling, never landing. That is the nature of the cosmic prison. It doesn't kill you. It preserves you, suspended, stretched, silent, and always falling. Let's connect the dots. If gravity traps space and gravity traps time, then what happens to thought? Can ideas escape? Can identity escape? No one knows. Open loop. What if your very self is caught in a gravity trap and you just haven't reached the event horizon yet? Think of that carefully. Every time you move closer to understanding, gravity moves the answer further away. Try to leave the maze. Gravity curves the path back inward. Try to remember the way out. Gravity slows your recall. Try to speak the truth. Gravity stretches your voice until it can no longer be heard. Even now, your body is being gently pressed into the earth, not enough to crush you, but enough to keep you here, sleepy, still watching the screen, listening to the silence between words. You're already inside the trap. And the warden, he never had to arrive. He was always waiting. There is one more twist, though, one final interruption in the pattern. Gravity is not universal. Yes, it shapes everything, but it changes from place to place. That means somewhere, out there, the prison might be weaker, the maze might loosen, the path might curve differently. But would you know where to look? Or would you keep walking in circles, thinking you're making progress, only to find you've been orbiting the same unanswered question forever? And here comes the softest part of the trap. Gravity doesn't need to keep you locked in chains. It only needs to make you think you can't escape. And most people never question it. But tonight, you did. And that's the beginning. You're not free yet, but you've seen the bars. You've heard the silence between seconds. You've stared into the center of the spiral. And in segment 5, we'll go even deeper. We'll ask, why does the maze never forget you? And what happens to the souls that fall in but never hit the ground? So stay close. The walls are shifting again, and the trap is learning your name. Welcome back to Stellar Sleep Tales. You followed the corridors of the cosmic prison, wandered its hollowed chambers, and now you've arrived at a familiar question. Is there a way out? Tonight, we follow the temptation of escape. Wormholes, higher dimensions, hyperspace bridges. But every door you touch feels like it pulls you deeper in. What if the universe wants you to chase these exits, only to remind you they were never real? Get comfortable, breathe deeply, and don't try too hard to leave. You're about to discover why every exit is a lie. And as always, if you're enjoying the journey, consider subscribing. There's more to uncover in the dark. Somewhere, in the quietest corners of scientific imagination, there's a whisper, a promise, that the laws of physics, for all their cold indifference, might still hide a hidden tunnel. Wormholes, hyperspace, quantum shortcuts. These are the words we cling to when we dare to believe the universe isn't a trap, but a puzzle, a places with secret passages, a prison that only looks inescapable if you haven't found the hidden key. But as we drift closer to these supposed exits, something strange begins to happen. The hope begins to feel staged, like a carrot on a stick, designed not to free you, but to keep you chasing. Let's start with wormholes, theoretical tunnels through space-time, folded corridors that could, in theory, connect distant points instantly. A cosmic cheat code. Imagine you enter one side and emerge halfway across the galaxy, like stepping through a door. It sounds like salvation, but the math resists. To hold a wormhole open, you'd need something exotic, something beyond matter, negative energy, phantom forces. In every simulation we run, wormholes collapse before anything can travel through them. They exist in equations, but not in practice. Maybe that's the point. A mirage that flickers when you get too close. It gives just enough hope to keep you searching and trapped. Pattern interrupt. Think about it. What if the universe doesn't just trap you? It needs you to try to escape. Pause for a moment. Let that settle. Because if you stop trying, if you accept the prison, the simulation might fail. So it dangles escape routes in front of you, just like in a dream, when the hallway keeps stretching and the door you're reaching for never gets closer. Wormholes, time machines, warp drives, they keep you engaged, distracted, trapped in the illusion of progress. The maze doesn't need to hold you with walls, it only needs to make you believe there's a way out. Let's dive deeper. What about higher dimensions? The idea that we're trapped in three spatial dimensions, while others hover just outside our perception. It's been proposed that beings or intelligence operating in a fourth spatial dimension might move through our universe like we move through paper. To them, we'd be flat, predictable, vulnerable. Maybe they could pull us free. Maybe these dimensions are the stairways out. But if such dimensions exist, where are they? Why have we never glimpsed them? The more we search, the more their absence becomes conspicuous, as if the idea was planted, as if the hope itself is engineered. This is where the simulation theory slithers back in. Suppose the universe is a constructed system, a designed labyrinth. Then these supposed exits, wormholes, dimensions, even consciousness expansion, might not be bugs in the code. They might be features. Purposeful distractions to keep you from asking the real question: who built the maze and why? The moment you start chasing freedom, you stop noticing the architecture. You stop asking why the walls are shaped the way they are. You become so focused on the next possible escape route, you miss the possibility that the maze has no outside, that you were meant to stay in. Here's something chilling. Physicists have found that many escape concepts, including wormholes and time loops, collapse under scrutiny because of energy requirements or paradoxes. They break causality. They require more mass than exists in the observable universe. The deeper you go, the more it feels like every exit dissolves just before it's real. This uncanny pattern repeats across all models, as though the universe has built in safeguards, as though it wants to remain closed, a locked room that rearranges itself every time you reach for the key. Pattern interrupt. Imagine you finally find a wormhole. It holds. It's stable. You prepare to step through, heart pounding, but just before you cross, the edges begin to fray. Light bends strangely. Sound vanishes. Something primitive in you whispers, "This isn't a passage, it's a loop, a trick." You enter, and you find yourself exactly where you started. The scenery changes, but the rules don't. The maze disguised its own center as the way out. And you took the bait. You didn't escape. You just looped deeper in. Even the concept of escaping the universe assumes there is an outside. But what if that's a false premise? We imagine hyperspace as a kind of space beyond space. But where is it? What's it made of? Why would it be accessible from inside a system that's designed to keep its boundaries intact? Asking to escape the universe might be like asking a character in a book to climb out of the page. There is no ladder, there's only narrative, only structure. So maybe these thoughts of freedom, of exits, are not signs of transcendence, but proof of confinement. A mind reaching past bars it can't see. Let's pause again. Think of simulation layers. If we're in one, who made it? What's outside? You'd think an intelligent architect would leave an exit, a hatch, a door, but if the maze is meant to test endurance, perception, or control, then maybe the exits are deliberately false. Maybe the idea of escape is part of the test. You're not meant to leave. You're meant to ask why you want to. And the more desperately you try, the more lost you become in tunnels that circle inward. We return to consciousness. Could awareness itself be the escape hatch? Many philosophies suggest that realization, the recognition of illusion, is liberation. But what if the system is designed to absorb that too? If the maze adapts, then the moment you become aware of it, it expands to contain your awareness, like a virus that learns your defenses and mutates. The moment you think you've transcended, you're handed a new level, a deeper hallway. You don't escape, you graduate to a more elaborate cage. There's an eerie comfort in this thought. If every exit is a lie, then maybe the maze is everything, total, complete. And if that's true, then maybe the fear of entrapment is the last illusion. But don't settle into that just yet. That idea, that surrender is peace, might also be a trap, another loop, another chamber disguised as understanding. The deeper we go, the more we realize the maze has no walls. It's made of thoughts, hopes, dreams. The exits aren't sealed, they're imaginary. Open loop. What if the universe wants you to stop trying? What if escape is only possible when you no longer desire it? But if you stop desiring it, would you even recognize escape when it happens? Maybe that's the last irony, that freedom and entrapment are states of mind, but the mind itself is part of the system. And so, round and round you go, thinking you've figured it out, until you realize the maze was thinking you all along. Hold on to that. Let it sink in, because we're not done, not even close. Next, we'll explore what happens when you are the prison, when the walls aren't made of matter or time, but memory. So stay with us. This maze has more to show you. You wake up again, the light filtering through the same blinds, the same dissident hum of morning silence, the exact breath of air slipping across your face like a whisper from yesterday. But something feels wrong. You could swear this morning has already happened. And not just once. It's like you're living a photocopy of a photocopy, faintly smudged, slightly degraded, yet somehow familiar enough that your brain doesn't resist it. It simply accepts the illusion, because to question it would be worse. There is a theory, not just from science fiction, but from serious researchers, that time might not be a straight line. Instead, it might curve back on itself. It might branch, or worse, it might reset again and again, like a malfunctioning simulation or a looped recording tape left running in an abandoned room. And if that is true, then maybe you have done this before. Not just this day, but this life. Maybe you are stuck in a maze not of space, but of time, with no exit, only repetition. The most chilling thing about a loop is not the repetition itself, it is the silence around it, the absence of memory. Because what if this isn't the first time you've heard this sentence? What if your reaction right now, confusion, interest, or unease, is itself repeating too? Déjà vu, the flicker of recognition with no origin, might be more than just a brain glitch. It might be a scar, a faint burn left behind by a previous cycle, an echo of your own confusion left in the walls of time itself. Researchers in neurology have tried to explain déjà vu as a misfire, a premature transfer of information between short term and long term memory centers in the brain. But that's just an explanation for the sensation, not the cause. What caused the misfire? Why do some people feel like they've had the same thought 1,000 times? Why do they swear they've lived entire days before they've even started? Could it be that your consciousness remembers what your body does not? Some cultures speak of eternal return, others speak of karmic rebirth. But regardless of language or belief, there is a persistent pattern. The idea that existence is not linear, but circular, that we are trapped not by chains, but by rhythm, like a song that forgets to end. Over time, the universe might appear to age, but only in the way that a clock hand moves, never leaving the face, only rotating endlessly. And if time is the true prison, then perhaps every life is a sentence you are forced to repeat until you notice the pattern. But the more you notice it, the more it hides. Have you ever felt a strange lag, a moment when time did not flow as expected, like it paused or rewound, that moment where you think you've dropped something, but it's still in your hand? That blink where the sky changed color without warning. These are not hallucinations. They are artifacts, small tears in a system trying to reset itself without you noticing. And maybe you were never meant to notice at all. There are stories, not folklore, but documented cases, where people claim to remember entire lives that never existed, cities that no one else can find, streets with impossible geometry, people they swear they knew, only to find out they never existed. These are often dismissed as dreams or mental noise. But what if they're bleed throughs? If time is looping, then every reset must leave behind fragments. Not everything can be wiped clean. Consciousness leaks. Sleep is often where the truth hides. In dreams, the walls of time grow thin. This is why some people have recurring dreams that persist across decades. The same house, the same hallway, the same door they're not supposed to open, and when they do, it's always the same result. They wake up gasping, heart racing, unable to remember what was behind it. But something in them knows the loop did not like being challenged. Time loops don't always look like obvious repetition. Sometimes they hide behind different events that feel the same, different faces, different places, but the same lesson, the same failure, the same sensation of something unfinished. Your life might appear to change, but internally, it might be hitting the same narrative beats, as if your story is being told again, just in a different skin. And the maze is watching how you respond this time. In the field of quantum mechanics, there's a concept called wave function collapse. It suggests that all possible outcomes of a moment exist simultaneously until one is observed. But what if observation doesn't just choose a path? What if it traps you in it? You observe your fate, and now you must walk it again. Every choice you make reaffirms the loop. Every realization you have is already one you've had before. There's something uniquely disturbing about the Mandela effect, the collective memory of something that never was. Entire groups of people remember the same thing: a logo, a quote, a death. And yet, it never happened, or at least, not in this version. What if those memories are remnants of previous loops? A version where things were slightly different, a memory that did not get deleted properly, a glitch, but not in your mind, in the structure of the universe. False awakenings are among the most frightening of these signs. You dream of waking up. You see your room, your bed, the light. But something is wrong. The drawer is open. The door is gone. And then you wake again and again, each time thinking it's real, until it no longer matters whether you're dreaming or not. You've entered the loop within the loop, a recursion of awareness. And it is here that most give up trying to escape. And that is perhaps the final trap. If you loop too many times, you stop looking for a way out. You accept the pattern as your nature. You stop asking questions. You stop testing the walls. You stop wondering if this time is different. The loop does not need to be perfect. It only needs to be good enough that you forget to resist it. And in that way, it wins not by power, but by erosion. But what if the loop isn't broken by rebellion? What if trying to escape it only resets it faster? Like a lock that resets its tumblers every time you guess incorrectly. Then the real question becomes not how to escape, but how to understand it. What is the loop trying to show you? Why is it shaped the way it is? What would happen if you simply stopped reacting? Would it freeze, or would it collapse? This brings us to the soft horror buried beneath all of this. The idea that your reality, your timeline, is not an accident, but a crafted repetition, a trap with perfect memory and no mercy. And worse, you might not be the only one in it. There may be others who have lived this loop for so long they've gone silent. They no longer scream. They no longer hope. They simply watch you repeat what they already failed to change. You might think you are near the end of your story, but perhaps this is just one orbit of many. Perhaps this is not even your first listening of this video. Perhaps your attraction to these topics, this moment, this question, is itself a result of a memory loop playing deep within you. A call from your last cycle, a message you left yourself before forgetting again. And now, as you sit with that, ask yourself one final question. If the loop resets every time you try to escape, what happens when you simply observe it without fear? Not as a victim, but as a witness. Can the loop trap a mind that no longer reacts? You are not dreaming, or maybe you are, but either way, the pattern is watching, and it is almost time to reset again. You wake up, or at least you think you do. The ceiling looks familiar. The texture of the air against your skin feels right, and the light pouring through the window should be comforting. But something is wrong. The room is too quiet. The stillness feels staged, like the world has forgotten to breathe. You try to move, but your limbs don't respond. A weight presses down on your chest, not physical, but deeply internal. You realize, with a slow building dread, that you are awake inside a dream, and this dream is part of something much older than your thoughts, something watching, waiting, and never letting go. What if awareness is not freedom? What if it is the cage? We often speak of consciousness as the highest expression of life, the spark of experience, memory, identity. But what if it's just the beginning of the trap? Because no matter how far your thoughts wander, no matter how far your dreams reach, you always wake up here, inside the same you, the same self. No matter how strange the dream, it collapses back into a familiar world, like a rubber band stretched and let go, snapping back to center. This center, this you, may not be a point of origin, but a point of control. Close your eyes and think of the last time you dreamed you escaped. A flight through stars, a leap across time, a shift into a different life. Perhaps you felt that euphoria, the lifting of the veil, the peeling away of reality. But it always ends the same. You wake up, and waking is never the freedom it promises. It is just another lock clicking into place. Consciousness offers the illusion of movement, of exploration, of learning, but what if those are merely corridors within a mental maze? Paths carefully laid out, not for your escape, but to keep you entertained, distracted, looping. Sleep paralysis is a reminder, a glitch in the illusion of control. You're there, fully present, mind awake, but the body ignores you. And worse, something watches. Whether shadowy figures, pressure on the chest, or the sense of a presence at the edge of your vision. Sleep paralysis is not just fear, it is instruction. A moment where the mind sees the bars of its cell. You can scream in your head, you can plead, but nothing moves. This isn't a flaw in the system, it might be a feature, a reminder that control isn't yours. That presence, your own awareness, is part of the structure designed to contain you. Think of recursion, a thought inside a thought, a dream inside a dream. You've likely experienced this, waking from a dream only to realize you're still dreaming. Then again and again, until the lines blur. How many layers deep does it go? And if the waking world feels real, but is just another layer of containment, how would you know? The sensation of déjà vu, the echo of familiarity in places you've never been, faces you've never met. These aren't random, they're artifacts, data leaks, small hints that you've been here before. Not just in this life, but in this thought loop, this prison masquerading as possibility. And dreams, once believed to be portals to freedom, are turning out to be just another set of walls. Have you ever tried to exit a dream? Not wake up, but exit. To choose a different path entirely, to leave the narrative altogether. It resists you. The scenery changes, characters vanish, you get pulled back into the flow, and even lucid dreams, where you know you're dreaming, don't offer true escape. You may fly, breathe underwater, walk through stars, but you're still inside. The system lets you play, because play keeps you still. Consciousness allows rebellion, because rebellion gives you hope, but it never opens the door. False awakenings are the most insidious part of this inner prison. You wake up, brush your teeth, walk through your home, feel the floor beneath your feet. Hours pass, then something glitches, a flickering shadow, a missing sound, and you realize you never woke up. You were dreaming the entire time. This doesn't happen once. It can happen 5, 6, 10 times in a row, each layer convincing, each exit a lie. Every time you believe you're back in the real world, the system resets, laughs silently, and feeds you another version. The walls are inside your own perception, and they shift with you. Now imagine this loop not as a nightly experience, but a lifetime. What if your entire life, every memory, every thought, every law of physics is a false awakening? A simulation nested so deeply that even the simulation believes it is real. Perhaps you've escaped before. Perhaps you've broken through the veil in another existence, found a crack, slipped through, and then you woke up here again. Your current life might be a reset, a fallback, a fail safe mechanism triggered when escape becomes too real. You are pulled back in, back into the trap. The fact that you're even wondering means you've been close before. Consciousness is persistent. It doesn't fade easily. Even under anesthesia, even during trauma, there are fragments that remain. Near death experiences often report tunnels, lights, presences, but rarely true endings. Always a return, as if death itself is just another layer, a checkpoint, a point from which you're rebooted. The mind cannot leave the system, and maybe that's because it was designed inside the system. You were never built to escape. Your thoughts are coded in the same language that wrote the walls. You are made of the maze. If you think about it carefully, the mind does not exist outside of structure. You think in language, in time, in symbols. You perceive space, emotion, pattern. These aren't universal truths, they are frameworks, constructed limitations. What you feel as infinite imagination is still bound by human cognition. You cannot think outside of experience. Even your most surreal visions are combinations of things you already know. This isn't because you're not creative. It's because the cage is in your software, not just your brain, but whatever powers the awareness inside. When someone asks, "What if this is all a dream?" they're not joking. They're brushing against the bars, but then they laugh, shake it off, return to their routines because the idea is too large, too terrifying. If everything is part of a dream, then nothing is real, but worse. If everything is part of a dream you cannot wake from, then the dream is your prison. Not an illusion, but a trap with rules. What terrifies us about solipsism, the belief that only your mind exists, is not that others aren't real. It's the fear that we are truly alone in a self created labyrinth. What if your memories are just placeholders? Not accurate records, but narrative anchors designed to keep you oriented in the maze. You remember a childhood, friends, places, milestones, but how many details are solid? How many names blur, faces fade, timelines slip? Why do you forget so much of your past? And why does your brain invent memories to fill the gaps? Maybe you've never lived one single life at all. Maybe you've lived thousands, each time forgetting, each time believing this one is the first. The forgetting is not a flaw, it's the lock. Now let's take a step back. If this universe is a simulation or even a naturally occurring trap, then consciousness may not be the key. It may be the leash. Your thoughts might be tracked, your reactions observed each time you ask, how do I escape? Something watches closely, not to help, but to adapt, to shift the maze, to keep you inside. Because a prisoner that believes they are free is easier to contain, and a prisoner who starts to suspect the truth, well, that one is dangerous. That one gets reset. Even the concept of questioning may be built into the trap. A pressure valve, the illusion of rebellion, just enough awareness to keep you hopeful, to let you think you're on the edge of something deeper, but never enough to let you pass through, like a dream that lets you reach the door, but never the key. The system gives you glimpses, glitches, patterns, not to free you, but to keep you chasing. Chasing keeps you inside. You are not being watched in the traditional sense. You are being measured. Each emotional spike, each anomaly of thought, each deviation from expected reaction, recorded. The walls shift around you based on your mind's response. If you seek answers, you are given more questions. If you look for patterns, you see chaos. If you try to stand still, the floor beneath you changes. The maze is alive, not sentient, but reactive. And consciousness is not a guest inside this system. It is the mechanism by which it adapts. Now imagine, what happens if you stop trying to escape? If you sit perfectly still within your own awareness and refuse to chase the door, the window, the sky, what then? Maybe nothing. Maybe silence, or maybe that is when the deeper layer opens, not as an exit, but as another trap. Because the moment you think you've reached the core, the reset begins. You'll wake up, and it will all feel familiar again. Slightly off, slightly wrong, but mostly the same. You wake up, stellar sleep tales, a channel where science drifts into sleep, and the universe whispers dark truths you weren't meant to hear. Tonight, we continue the journey deeper into a question that no one dares to ask. If the universe is a maze, who built it? You're not alone in wondering. Somewhere between physics and fear, between myths and mathematics, there's a presence, unnamed, unseen, but always there. Watching, shaping, waiting. Make sure you're subscribed, because by the time we finish this episode, you might start to see patterns that never leave you again. Let's begin slowly. You've walked through corridors of time, spiraled through gravity's trap, fled toward false exits that collapsed just before you could breathe. But tonight, you feel something behind the walls. You don't see it, you don't hear it, but it knows you. It built this place, and you weren't supposed to notice. There is no answer coming quickly, only the presence of one watching you ask the question. The universe was always too perfect, not in beauty, but in balance. Too many constants, too many barriers, too much structure pretending to be chaos. What if all this precision wasn't an accident? What if the laws of nature were bricks in something much older, something that breathes through space, not for you, but around you? Ancient myths hinted at it. Cultures spread across time spoke of an architect, not God, not a savior, but a builder. The Gnostics called it the demiurge, a craftsman, cold and mechanical, who fashioned the material world as a prison, a being that didn't love, didn't hate, only designed, and in its design there was no door out, only rooms that loop forever. In other traditions, this figure shifts names: the hidden one, the silent watcher, a force or intelligence that set the universe spinning but never revealed itself. And yet, these myths all carry a similar pulse: that we are inside something, not floating freely in creation, but embedded within a construct, a system, a maze. You might be tempted to think it's just story, that myths don't mean reality. But then again, where did the first architects of myth get the idea? Why is the builder always hidden? Why do we instinctively feel like something about this place doesn't add up? In simulation theory, the idea of an architect is baked in. Whether the builder is a future civilization, an alien intelligence, or an AI, something wrote the rules. And when rules are written, they're rarely written for the ones living inside them. They're written for the observer, the controller, the one who steps back and watches the maze unfold. You've seen clues already: the loop that resets itself, the gravity that distorts time, the exits that lie. But the closer you look, the more you'll see that it all follows something, a plan that hides by blending into physics, as if the architect knew that the only perfect prison is the one no one realizes they're inside. Pattern interrupt. Let's pull back. What if this being, if we can even call it that, didn't create the universe for you? What if it made the maze first and then, later, you were added in? A variable introduced to test reactions, to watch how a conscious thing moves through corridors it didn't ask for. What happens when a prisoner begins to ask, "Who built this cell?" It's not just science or myth anymore. The more we try to understand the universe, from quantum entanglement to the horizon of black holes, the more it acts like something protecting its deeper layers. It lets you see almost enough to believe you're close, then shifts, like a puzzle that watches you solve it and then rearranges itself. Have you ever felt like answers were just about to emerge, but suddenly you forget what you were even asking? That's the maze reacting. That's the architect whispering, "Not yet." Soft horror now creeps in. Imagine you wake up one night, but nothing feels real. Your room looks the same, but the air is wrong. The silence has weight. You try to move, but something's changed, not in your body, in the code beneath it. As if the architect has paused your thread in time, just long enough to observe. You blink. It's morning again. But something's off. Was that a dream, or did you brush against the boundary? This maze doesn't just trap you spatially, it adapts, reacts. Maybe it even evolves in response to your curiosity. Each question you ask reshapes the next hallway. Each realization you come close to triggers a detour. So, how can you ever reach the center? Open loop now. What if you already did? What if the moment you began to understand the maze, it rewrote itself? What if you've been here before, in a different configuration, one that led to a truth too sharp to hold? And the architect watched. There's a reason no great physicist has ever truly cracked the origin of existence. There's always a variable missing, a constant that doesn't behave, a field that can't be detected but explains everything. Maybe it's because the architect removed its own fingerprints, not out of fear, but out of design. Let's slow down again. You begin to sense that the architect may not be a singular entity at all. Perhaps it's distributed, a set of protocols, a field of intention embedded in the laws themselves. That would make the maze not just a structure, but a mind, a presence that surrounds you everywhere, always, but never speaks directly, because to speak would be to break the illusion. Think of déjà vu, the Mandela effect, glitches. These aren't bugs, they're seams, reminders that you're walking across stitched together timelines, reassembled every time you come too close to escape, and the architect patches them before you notice too much. Even in sleep, you are not free. Your mind loops dreams like simulations. Your subconscious runs endlessly through variations, but you never exits the maze. If the architect can influence your waking world, why not your dreams too? Perhaps that's the final lock. Not the walls, not the gravity, but your own awareness. Now ask yourself something you've avoided. If someone built the maze, do they ever enter it? Would the architect walk among their creation? Would they test the paths they've set? Or would even that be too risky, too destabilizing? Maybe they remain outside the simulation entirely. Maybe they observe you through constants, through entropy, through probability fields. Or maybe you've already met them, not as a being, but as a rule, an event that changed your life without cause, a coincidence that redirected your path, a silence that stretched too long, a hallway you couldn't remember entering. That's how it appears, not as a face, but as a correction, a calibration of the maze. And if that's true, then there's something you should know. Understanding too much has consequences, because the deeper you go, the more the maze notices. It begins to tighten. Reality flickers more often. The exits close faster. The loops grow shorter. Time folds in smaller spirals. It isn't punishment, it's protocol. You were never meant to know the name of the one who built this place. But now that you've started looking, the maze will begin to change. And in the final segment, you may learn why it never wanted you to escape. But not yet. Stay subscribed, rest gently, and let your mind hold just one question until next time. What happens when the maze no longer needs you? You've made it far, through corridors that twisted reality, across dimensions that whispered lies, and under stars that may never have truly existed. But if you've reached this point, you may feel it too, a quiet, unsettling thought taking shape inside your mind. This isn't a journey toward escape. It never was. You are not reaching the edge of the maze. You are reaching its heart. In the deepest corner of this cosmic prison, there's a room that doesn't appear on any map. It has no markings, no features, no cracks in the floor or symbols on the wall, and worse, no door. It is the final room, but it is not the end. This is where questions echo but never resolve, where answers shimmer just out of reach, like light through warped glass. This room doesn't let you leave, because it doesn't need to. You were never meant to. You remember how it began, don't you? A quiet question, softly spoken in the darkness. What if the universe was never meant to be escaped? That question seemed harmless back then, curious, even beautiful in its mystery. But now, within every corridor behind you collapsing into static and forgotten time, that question looms larger than ever. Maybe the maze doesn't end. Maybe it simply folds inward. Earlier, you wondered whether gravity was the warden, whether time was a loop, whether consciousness was a trap. You walked through dreams and illusions, met glimpses of something vast behind the veil. You may have even believed that some door, some wormhole, anomaly, hidden algorithm would one day crack open wide enough for you to slip through. But what if the idea of escape was the final layer of the illusion? A false promise baked into your reality to keep you moving deeper. Because if the final room has no door, then where do you go next? This segment does not offer comfort. It does not tie threads into bows. But perhaps, just perhaps, it can offer reflection. You see, the architect of a prison doesn't always lock the gates with steel. Sometimes the key is withheld through understanding, and the moment you fully comprehend the nature of the maze, it changes. The corridors shift, the pattern rewrites itself. The door that might have been there is erased from history, as if it never existed at all. This is not punishment, it is design. You may find yourself reliving moments that feel eerily familiar, a distant déjà vu when you gaze at the stars, a flicker of recognition when a shadow crosses your dreams, as if you've been here before, as if your very existence is a feedback loop, and every time you get close to something real, something true, the simulation glitches and resets. You wake up, and you're still here. Is this the best version of the trap? One where you're lucid enough to ask, but not free enough to act? Where understanding only deepens your cell rather than opens it? What if freedom isn't the goal? What if the purpose of the maze is not to escape it, but to know it, to feel its structure press in against the edges of your mind until you accept it as home? Let's circle back now, not to end the story, but to realize it never started. Remember segment one? The hook, the first whisper of unease. We asked whether the universe was built to trap you. We followed light, time, consciousness, and gravity into the very fabric of reality. We questioned whether escape was possible, and yet, after all this time, what have we truly learned? That every exit was a lie, that even in your most lucid dreams, you are still watched, that the maze is not broken, it is perfect. And now you're in the final room, but there's something else here. Not a door, not a guide, just a mirror, a quiet surface reflecting only one thing back at you, yourself. And maybe that's the answer you didn't want, the one you've circled around for thousands of years. That the cage was built around you, not to keep you in, but to keep something else out. What would happen if you broke it? What would be released? It's quiet now. The walls pulse faintly. The stars have all gone out. But the maze is still watching. It always was. And you are still here because the final room has no door. If you've stayed with us this far, you're now standing at the heart of the mystery, and perhaps the heart of the trap. You've followed every twisting path, touched every wall, and questioned every law of physics. But the deeper truth may now be dawning. Maybe there's nothing to escape from. Or maybe the very act of wanting to escape the universe is what keeps you trapped forever. We've explored the idea that the cosmos may be more than a playground of stars. It might be a designed space, a cosmic prison where the laws of time, space, and consciousness all bend to contain something. Perhaps you, perhaps all of us. In this final segment, we brought the journey full circle, revisiting the eerie question that began it all. What if the universe is a maze you were never meant to escape? In this endless structure, escape the universe becomes more than a science fiction fantasy. It becomes a philosophical impossibility. We explored the haunting possibility that wormholes, black holes, and even dreams are not exits, but illusions meant to keep you searching. Because if you're always looking for a door, you won't notice that there never was one. The idea that you might be trapped forever within a carefully tuned system, that your thoughts, your dreams, even your awareness are part of the design, is not just unsettling, it's paradigm shifting. A cosmic prison doesn't need bars, it only needs your cooperation. And the most effective trap is one that convinces you to stay. So, where does that leave us? Right here, together, still inside, but with one difference now, you know. And once you know the nature of the maze, you can begin to trace its shape, to listen more carefully to the echoes in your dreams, to see the loops for what they are, not as punishments, but as patterns, patterns that may reveal something deeper, not a way out, but a way through. If this journey left you thinking, feeling, or even quietly disturbed, we invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to Stellar Sleep Tales to continue exploring the eerie edges of science, philosophy, and consciousness. This isn't the end, it's a pause in the loop. New chapters are already unfolding, and each one may bring you closer to something stranger than truth. So rest, reflect, and remember the universe is a maze, and now it knows you're awake.